So family, are we all ready? Are we all ready? Making sure that enough people have time to get here and um, check in with us and participate in this process. You know, when I was a young girl, I told you I grew up in Brooklyn. I'm a Brooklyn, New York girl. Never could I have imagined that I'd be in this place, that I would be able to share this journey that I have been on, that I would be able to share these experiences with my mother, with my daughter, some of my very, very best friends along this process, throughout this process, and of course, my sorority sisters. They have been so amazing, absolutely amazing. Hey, Angela, it's so good to see you. Very, very good to see you here with me. Glad to see you. Angie is actually the daughter of Rodney Baker, one of my very good friends, someone who means the world to me. And she just embraced me and my daughter, my mom, just embraced us a part of the Baker family. If anyone knows Rodney, you know that once you become loved and just absorbed by the Bakers, you're in good company. You're in really, really good company. So hi Angie, thank you for joining me for this conversation. So let me talk a little bit about writing a book. It's my belief that everyone has a book in them. And I know you've probably heard that so many times, right? You've heard that story, you've heard those comments about everyone has a book in them, but it's true. It's absolutely true. If you think about your life's journey, even at 20 years old, the things that you had an opportunity to experience, and if you get the chance to share it with people so that their journey is less bumpy, so that they kind of piggyback on your own experiences, it doesn't matter what your age is because everybody has something to share. Absolutely something to share. So whether it's 20 years old, 30, or the big 52 like me, there is so much for us to experience. So let me begin by saying that when I wrote my first book, it was, wow, back in the early 2007 time period. It was my first book that I was writing, and I wrote it right from my bedroom. Right from my bedroom, back and forth from the bedroom to the living room to the kitchen. I personally don't have a very, what would I say, very structured process that I follow when I write my book because I write from my heart. It just flows from my heart. But I'm the type of writer that much of what I write about is rolling up in my head for months, weeks, and I have been kind of tilling the soil. I've been thinking about it, praying about it, maybe not the topic, but thinking and praying about the process. Asking God to help me understand what is it that I need to share. And along that journey, I shared with people like my sorority sister, Ilana, who has joined us tonight. Hey, Sora. Ooh, so good to see you here this evening. And I share that information with people who I love. And I tell them that I have this in me. Writing is similar to giving birth. Less painful, but I guess that's relative. Because some people have an easy birth. I remember when I gave birth to my daughter, there was a young lady who had to experience a C-section. By the next day, she was sitting up with her legs crossed on the side of the bed. Me, I was dragging around, and I had natural childbirth. So, but writing is so much like giving birth because you conceive of a concept. You have something that is rolling around in your mind that you want to be able to share. that you want to put on the page. And most of us, when we were young, and at least in this age group, we started journaling. I remember when I was young, my mom buying me books, and I started writing poetry. And sometimes it started as simple as listening to the radio and writing down the words to a song. And once you memorize the words to that song, it was the inspiration for something else that took you in a very different direction. That's what writing does. It just kind of opens up and starts to grow as part of a very organic process that you experience through the different things that happen along the journey of your life. Now, figuring out exactly what you want to write about is different for everyone. It's a different journey for everyone. For me, this particular topic came because of the coronavirus. And my memories of having been through a very difficult time of growing my business when the economic downturn happened, the mortgage crisis happened in 2008. And I felt like I had so much to share. I had been counseling and, coaching quite a few people who were my clients that were having lots of difficulty dealing with this pandemic and trying to figure out what to do. So here's what was so interesting for me. When you're looking at this pandemic and you're realizing that most of the conversation is about businesses, right? It's about what's happening economically. What things are companies going through? How are they having these experiences? No one is really telling the story about what does the employee do? What happens to the person that's working within the organization? What are they experiencing? And how can they benefit through this process? And then very little conversation was being shared about how are people dealing with this mentally, physically, spiritually. Because if you don't have those together, doesn't matter what company you own, doesn't matter what job title you have, life gets real sticky in that process. So I started doing my research. So when writing any good book, you have to conceptualize, you kind of, it incubates in you for a while. And then you get to a place where you decide that you want to attach yourself to the concept, to the idea, what becomes rock solid. And I always share with people when it comes to writing, because it is a creative process, don't get stuck on the details just yet. Enjoy the process of being able to write. Enjoy the process of being able to put words on the page that reflect your thoughts, your feelings, the things that you are experiencing in and around you, and just let that flow naturally. Because you have plenty of time to double back and really solidify the content at that time. So you kind of start outlining what it is that you want to write. What is it you want to write about? So when I started writing 3 Sides of Every Crisis, the things that came to me were businesses, working professionals, and just the individual process of dealing. So from my perspective, that was a holistic 360-degree view of how individuals are going through this experience. Whether you own a business or if you're working within an organization, if you've lost or been separated from the company that you were working with, and then how are you dealing in your household? Because relationships change when you're in quarantine, don't they? Relationships change, and they change whether you're living alone or whether you're there with your spouse, your significant other, or a house full of children. Everything becomes different. So I started sketching out, just journaling and taking notes of what things were happening that I was experiencing, what buckets of information did I want to cover. So when you start writing your book, you start dialoguing and kind of creating a triage list of things that are important, not just to you, but important to the people who are going to be your readers. What's going to impact them the most? So when I looked at the bucket of businesses, the first thing, the very first thing that came to my mind was when organizations are dealing with a crisis in this very difficult place, the first thing you want to do is panic. It's a physical reaction to what's happening in your environment. So I knew that I had to start the conversation, start my writing with don't panic. Take your hand off the panic button. Pull back, draw back from that knee-jerk response to try to fix it immediately. Try not to take yourself to that particular place because quick doesn't mean right. Fast doesn't mean permanent. So you have to be strategic. So I knew that I wanted to start off talking about making strategic moves, not having quick responses to what was happening in the environment. I also knew that I wanted to give enough information to people who own businesses about the opportunities and how to find those opportunities. And that's where the research came in. For me, it was a little bit different because I actually have a background in business and leadership and had already done quite a bit of research. And in my day-to-day life and dealing with my clients, some of those topics, are things that are relative to my environment. So I decided that I want to narrow in on some particular strategies, right? Blue ocean strategy versus red ocean, and what it means to be a second or fast mover. And so that started to really open up my mind and get me energized about what it is I wanted to do. And I said, okay, Jewel, you have a background in this, but you've got to make sure that it remains relevant to what's happening now, what's going on today. So I had to do additional research to support the concepts that I was talking about, I wanted to talk about in the book, and make sure that they tied very, very solidly to things that people would be experiencing in this particular environment right now and make it relevant. So in doing that, when you start researching and you start asking questions, and research is wide, right? You can research by doing interviews of people who you draw on your own experiences, you use periodicals, journals, things that you have all around you. Technology makes it so beautiful such that it becomes easier for us to be able to do this type of research, to be able to tap in. Hey, Juan, it's so good to see you. That's my nephew, y'all. Let me take a pause and give a shout out to my nephew, Juan Lieber. I am so super proud of this young man. Somehow he creeped up and turned 30 something. I don't know when that happened, but he is a trailblazing, kick butt, take no prisoners entrepreneur. So I'm so proud of you, Juan. I'm so proud of you, Felicia, and all that you are doing with your businesses there in Virginia. He has grown his company from one location to multiple locations. So that's what I'm talking about, right? My nephew and I, during the holiday, actually had a conversation about how tough it can be to be an entrepreneur and having to stick to it and stay the course and realize that it's a journey. It is such a journey and it gets tough sometimes. So having people around you who can have those conversations, that's the type of information you get to draw on when you're writing your actual book and you're just triaging and you're sketching and you're journaling, and then you start flushing your themes out. You just flush them out by more of the research and the information that you find in your natural environment and then the research that you do. So something that's really important is that you test your concept, right? Before you get too far, you want to make sure that you test your concept with people around you who are going to tell you the truth. Oh my goodness. You need folks who are going to be honest with you. Not critical, not people who are going to discourage you, not people who want to tear you down. You don't need that. What you need is individuals who are going to say, that sounds good. I'm not sure what you mean by that. So my brother, Brian Bishop, who I love so very much, is so good at doing that. Brian and I were journalists years ago when we worked at the Savannah newspaper. And so I know that I can always call on him to be honest about what it is that I'm doing. So I made sure that I spoke with my mother. You know, mamas always tell you the truth. Oh my goodness. mamas tell you the truth. Your children. Ooh, okay, so that's another one. Your children keep you, seated in reality. And because I was very tough on my daughter in terms of her education and how she saw the world and how she responds to things, she was very good at saying, "Mommy, yeah, that sounds good, but not so much so." Brian could give me that very critical eye when it came to writing and the chapter ideas that I had, and if it resonated, if it really jumped out, you know. So he was good at being able to tell me how I should trim the fat, or when I sent him some of the information that I had put together on the book, he said, "That doesn't make sense for me. I'm not sure where you're going with that." That's what you need. You need that level of honesty and expertise all mixed together before you get too far in the journey. You need those folks who are going to love you, like Chris. That's my bonus baby. I call him my son from the days of living in Savannah, Georgia. Those folks who know you from way back when and still are with you, who will love you through this process, because writing a book, I told you, it's like giving birth. That thing ain't easy. It is not easy. And it's just the beginning part of the journey. So you've got your idea, you've sketched out kind of the themes that you want to be able to cover in your book, and you're doing your research, right? You're doing your research and you're pulling together all that critical information that you need. The other thing that's important is to think about the space that you're writing in. So some people will suffer from writer's block, and it depends on what you do for a living, what your personality profile is like. I'm an extrovert, right? But I'm a moderate extrovert. So even during this time of self-quarantine, it has been challenging, but okay for me because I'm a moderate extrovert. So I was okay with having this time away from the hustle and the bustle and being in this environment around everyone, so that I could be able to write and write comfortably. But at the same time, you got to mix up your environment. Make sure that you're going in spaces that inspire you, that allow you to continue to have this free flow of energy and excitement when it comes to writing, because there will be times when you get stuck. You're going to get stuck, and that's okay. It's okay to get stuck. The most important part is to get unstuck. You want to get to a place where you can move yourself out of that space and be able to continue to move forward with what it is that you are trying to accomplish. So I'm going to pause there just to talk a little bit about if you want to self-publish versus if you want to work with a publisher. Two very different journeys. It depends on your purpose. What's your reason for writing this book? My personal journey has always been to share my experiences. I've never written a book with the objective of making $1 million. I know how hard it is, or even 500, whatever. I didn't have a financial goal necessarily when I wrote the book. Well, that may sound strange to a lot of people. And again, it depends on you. It depends on what your journey is like, what your reason is for writing the book. And for me, every decision that I have made in my life, I have now, as an adult, realized it was a part of the process, right? One of the things that Oprah says is everything that you're going through is on purpose. It's for a purpose, and you are exactly where you're supposed to be as part of you writing yourself and navigating yourself through the pathways and the byways and the roadblocks for you to reach your ultimate destination. So if the book is meant to make $1 million, it will. Doesn't mean I am not working hard to market it and position it, and that I haven't made good revenue off of it. But for me, when you do what you love and you do it knowing that it has a bigger purpose than serving yourself, which is also my philosophy about the difference between success and greatness, you succeed when you do something just for yourself. It becomes greatness when you give it to the world so that it serves God's purpose for everyone else or whom he decides that it's supposed to reach and have the greatest impact for. So the greatness that will come out of this is that I'm sharing this story, my experience, the gifts that God has given me to be able to publish my book by going through the self-publishing process. Here's my reasoning. Self-publishing allows you to retain more control of your book. When you work with a larger publishing company, which is absolutely great, if you're an established author, if you have a concept that's going to do really, really well, like Michael Gerber's E-Myth. Years ago, when I wrote my second book, It Takes Tenacity, Michael Gerber was actually coaching me. I have been so amazingly blessed to meet some incredible people along this journey. When I wrote my first book, George Fraser of the Power Networking Conference, he wrote the foreword to my book. I met him because he was the keynote speaker at the Black Business Professionals and Entrepreneurs Conference. So when I wrote that first book, The Enterprising Entrepreneur, he wrote that foreword for me because he understood the journey of where I was going. He understood why I was self-publishing. When I wrote the second book, It Takes Tenacity, Michael Gerber was giving me advice. He said, Jewel, you've got to come from behind the curtain. You have to be able to reveal and express and release parts of you that can connect with the reader in a way that you're no longer afraid. Take the risk. Be brave enough to know that the story that you have is going to be replicated and beneficial to so many people. I was so thankful for that. And then now writing 3 sides of every crisis, here comes Les Brown. My goodness, who could have ever thought? So that's what I mean by when you are walking in your purpose, God reveals the destiny along the path. So deciding whether or not you want to self-publish or work with a publishing house is your personal decision. Just do your research. One of the things that happens when you're working with a publishing house is they control a lot of what happens with the book, but you've got a major company. You've got all their marketing, their revenue, their contacts, their resources behind it, but they also decide how much money they're going to put behind your project. Because remember, they have lots of authors. They are backing lots of books. They're working with so many people to the point that they have to decide where they're going to divvy up the revenue to be able to back the project and what that project means for their company and what it means for you. So being vocal in that process is very, very important, and making sure that when you enter that relationship, you know what you want to get out of it. That's very important. Self-publishing allows you to decide that you can work with companies like Lulu or Lightning Source or Ingram Spark. Those companies are great for self-publishers. Lightning Source works with authors that perhaps, or publishing houses that have larger numbers of books. Ingram Spark is for the smaller self-published, self-published authors, excuse me. So if you are new to publishing, those are just a couple of examples of companies that might work for you. The benefit of the self-publishing and working with companies like that is, for me, because I love to do book tours and I love to connect with people. That's me. I love to hear your stories. I love to be able to figure out how can I be of assistance? How can I help? How can I support you based on my experiences, my network, my resources, so that you can get the best out of my book and my own experiences and those within my circle. So when you self-publish, you have the opportunity to work with a lot of the companies that your publishing company, your printing company, your publishing company has, and organize book signings. I did that with Barnes & Noble. I will do it again. At the time when I wrote my first book, The Enterprising Entrepreneur, I did a 10-city book tour. It was outstanding. It was absolutely outstanding. And what I loved about it is, whatever city I went to, I was not lugging a bunch of books with me. Y'all know books are heavy. Books and shoes. When you travel and you put that inside your luggage, oh my goodness, 5 pounds, 10 pounds, quick. adds up. So they shipped everything right to the location. So when I showed up at the hotel, my box of books were waiting for me. All my information was there waiting on me. And that was extraordinary. You can link through Amazon and get your books posted on Amazon and sell your books that way. You can continue to sell your books through your website when you self-publish. When you don't, well, it depends on how you conduct and structure your negotiations with your publishing house. That will have bearing on what happens. But most of the time, I don't think you can have as much flexibility because there's a different revenue share that happens when you're working with a actual publishing house that's going to do the heavy lifting for you when you're publishing a book. So if you have questions, please make sure you post your questions here on Facebook. I'd love to be able to answer those questions. I just want to jump on for a little bit and talk to you about that process. I'm so excited because we're close to the book releasing at the end of this month. I've seen it. It looks great. It's absolutely wonderful. But you know, here's the other part of self-publishing. Writing the book is part of the journey. Editing the book is another significant part of the journey. Because once you have birthed this baby, so to speak, right? This is something that means so much to you. Now you have to turn it over to someone who can see it from a very objective lens. And sometimes that's hard for people who write because they feel like it's theirs, it's personal, right? And they get offended by some of the feedback that you get from individuals. But as I've shared in the past, in my industry, we say feedback is a gift because it means somebody cared enough to give you constructive criticism. You can use the word criticism, feedback. The key word is constructive because they're trying to give you information that's going to be of benefit to you. They want to make sure that your end product is the very best that you can offer. So you've got to have a strong editor, work with somebody who understands book writing versus writing an article in a publication. You know, depending on what your target audience, who your target audience is, the type of writing is going to be very, very different, right? The type of editing they're going to do is going to be different. So editing becomes the second big walk up that mountain. But it's a good mountain because then they get to shift around all the things that are important, cut up some of your sentences. But it was easier for me because I used to be a journalist. I got my degree from Hampton University. I was a mass media communications major. And at that time, you could study print, broadcast, and PR. So I had a double major in broadcast and print journalism. So I was used to getting my work cut up. And then when I came out in the world, oh my goodness, I worked as a journalist for the Savannah Morning News. So when you work in those types of environments, you're used to people editing your work. You're so used to it. So I didn't get as offended as maybe some other people do because I know the process, I understand the journey, I know why it's important, and I want to make sure that the end product is the best quality that I can get. And then you move on from that process of editing, and then it's time for you to work with a designer. Someone who is going to lay that book out using all the specific instructions, the specifications of the company that's going to actually print your work. So that would be your publishing company, such as Ingram Spark, Lulu, some of the others, Lightning Source. There are tons of them out there. Just do your research. Take the time to do the research so that you figure out what works best for you. Everybody's situation is different, so I'm not making any endorsements. I'm not telling you if you should self-publish or you shouldn't. I'm just saying your journey is going to be different based on what your needs are and what's most critical and important for you, right? So once you get to that stage, that's the part where it's really exciting. When the book is out of your hands, that's your time to really focus in on the marketing and the strategy, deciding who you're going to reach out to, what connections are you going to make, who will you ask to review the book, so that you have people who can give feedback that will be kind of endorsements of what the book is about. You can ask them to review sections of the book, or they can review the entire book. It's up to you. It's what works best for you. It's your journey. It's a beautiful journey. And I will repeat this. Everybody has a book in them. And if you're not the best writer, then co-write with someone. Find someone who is good at writing, who's willing to take on that charge. Use Upwork as an entity to be able to find a contractor, someone that can help you write the book, or Fiverr. There are lots of websites out there where people who are so gifted at writing. I've had people ask me, would I help them write their book? That's not my gift. My gift is writing, but writing something for someone else is not my gift. I can write something with someone, that I can do, but write it for someone, that's not my particular gift. So you can co-author a book with someone, right? You have a story to share. Everyone has a story to share. Everyone has these experiences that they have gone through that can be such an amazing blessing to other people who are struggling with things that you've conquered, who have had experiences and they don't know where to find those solutions, but they can find them between the pages of the story that you tell. And you have a unique way of telling that story. So when I was writing Three Sides of Every Crisis, one thing that kept coming to my mind was, because this is a business book, right? Make sure that I wrote it in a way that made it so relatable to people. Make sure that I wrote it such that people could hear the stories and experiences that I had experienced along the way, and how they could be significantly woven into the fabric of my particular book. One experience I had was I was at what's called Delta Days in the nation's capital. It's an annual event that is hosted by my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And we were, it was a Sunday, and we call it Social Justice Sunday. And there was a speaker by the name of Dr. Pastor Freddie Haynes. This gentleman is one of the most gifted speakers I have ever experienced in my life. And I've heard a whole lot of people speak. What made him so extraordinary was his ability to be able to open his message. And he told all these stories that took us through alleys, and it took us on bypaths, it took us on roadways, it took us on bridges. And just when you thought he wasn't going to come back to close his message, boom, there he was. It was so incredible to see how he was able to tell the story and connect it back to his original message, so that people understood that getting to your final destination is a process. And that's what writing is. It's a process. So you'll have times in which you get frustrated. Oh my gosh, can I tell you how many times I got frustrated? Oh, there was a point in which I was so annoyed in the editing of this book and the back and forth conversations of what should be, what shouldn't be. I just became overwhelmed, and I had to pull back, take a break, or as my mother said, Jewel, take a 10-minute break, because I am a perfectionist. I want to see it done. I want to see it done to a level of excellence. And so I got overwhelmed, and I had to take a break. I pulled back. I left the book alone. I surrendered my my ability to always want things to be perfect, but I had to surrender that so that I could come back to it fresh. So when the writing process for me is very different, as I said, for everyone. I've always been asked, how long did it take to write this book? In this particular case, it was 2 months. So you might think, that was kind of quick, but remember, we were in self-quarantine. So the time I spent was completely dedicated to this work, because as a corporate trainer, a leadership development expert, I wasn't spending as much time with my clients. I was doing more coaching, right? And I was doing that virtually. So I had a lot of time to be able to spend writing the book, giving it my undivided attention. So writing this book versus my other books, this one was a lot more intense. It required a lot more research. I sometimes got 90 minutes of sleep. Yeah, 90 minutes of sleep, not just one day, several days, several days in a row of getting 90 minutes of sleep. When I was writing my other books, I was also working full time. I was training, I was traveling. There were lots of things that I was doing. So each book has taken a different amount of time, several months. I've never been able to write a book in a very short period of time. I've had people who I've heard them say they've been able to write a book in 30 days. I don't know how to do that. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And I don't take anything away from any of those individuals. If that is the gift that you have, whew, my hat is off to you. That's an amazing journey, amazing process. So it's about 6:38. I wanted to jump on here for just 45 minutes. I'm not going to be here with you for a full hour. I just wanted to share some of my journey of writing three sides of every crisis, strategies to sustain business, manage your career, and take care of you. So my book is divided in three sections, right? It talks to the entrepreneur, the business owner, the person who's trying to figure out, how do I sustain my business? How do I get through this crisis? And then on the other side of this crisis, how do I continue to grow my business? So I have lots of strategies in there, lots of information about resources that you can tap into so that you can propel your business, how to work with your team, how to make some smart decisions, how to use ERGs, employee resource groups, things of that nature. And then I also talk a lot about, as a professional, as a person who's working in an organization, when these 60 days are done, what will you have experienced and done differently to propel your career? I also challenge readers and I ask you the question, are you working a job or are you building a career? This is the perfect time to decide which one works best for you. If you're working a job, that means that you're just punching a clock. And you're probably doing more complaining about your experience than you are feeling fulfilled in building a career. So it's time for you to kind of look at what you're doing and how you're engaging the environment to make the decisions that is going to foster what your life looks like at 30, 40, and 50. At some point, you will retire. Retirement means something very different for us these days. I know retirement for me because I actually came to Jamaica to semi-retire. Many of you remember it was a decision that I made, 5 months of research and just strategizing on how am I going to make sure that I immerse my family, my daughter into the West Indian culture, because you can't have that experience intimately by living in America. You have to be in your home country to really understand it. How do I do that? Still continue to work. I will always work. Working is not something that's negative for me. It's a beautiful experience because I love what I do. I love being able to coach people through correcting behaviors that allow them to get to a place of become the best leader that they can, and helping people to realize that leadership is not a position. You hear me, y'all? Leadership is not a position. It is not a title. It is a behavior. It doesn't matter what title you hold. It doesn't matter how you got that promotion. Leadership is what you do every single day. Doesn't mean you get it right all the time. It means that you're constantly working to get it right. It's a behavior. It's an investment in you. And it's skills that you acquire that you take with you along this journey. And so that second part of the book speaks to, what are you doing to make sure that you're building a career and not just working a job? Working a job is exhausting. It's not fulfilling. It's frustrating. And you are just too gifted, too talented. You have too much to offer the world to just be working a job. I want you to get smart and strong and strategize about how you build your career, how you make this thing called crisis work for you in a way that it works like never before. And as you do that, you take good care of yourself. You take really good care of yourself. I have learned so much in this journey and done things that I never thought I would get a chance to do. I love to sing. I started taking singing lessons virtually. I love to paint. I learned more about painting, abstract painting, and the process of being able to do that. I had to make sure I was doing things that fed my soul, my spirit, my mind, my body differently. I started cooking differently. It's almost become like a contest between my mother, daughter, and I. We're always throwing out different recipes, of who's making what on what particular day. And it's been an amazing experience. So I wanted to be able to share with you that writing is just like giving birth. You conceptualize, right, what you want to share with the world, what message you want to deliver to those who are going to be your readers, right? You carry this baby, this idea, this concept with you for a very, very long time. And you start thinking about how it will look when you give birth to it. Who will it serve? How will you nurture it? How will you take care of it? How will you make sure that it extends itself beyond just the pages that are in that book? What goodness can come from this experience? And then when you finally give birth to that book is when you start working that strategy of how do I make sure that I'm connected to this book and it connects to God's divine purpose for it? How do I connect with organizations that will purposely take this information and get something positive from it? And you get so energized and excited, at least I do, when you know that you're writing something that's going to benefit people, that's going to give them something that will take them from point A to point C, J, whatever letter on the alphabet, whatever part of the journey that they're experiencing, you're helping them to get there. So be thoughtful about what works for you, self-publishing or working with a publishing house. Make sure that you have a strong editor that can really review your book for you. Look to your circle, right, of people who can help review the book. Give you feedback on the book. Make sure that you're getting feedback from people who love you, who will give you constructive feedback, constructive criticism, that will be honest about things that you need to tweak before you actually release that book. Have yourself a sound editor who knows the industry, right? Who knows the industry really, really well. Write an ebook. The third book that I actually created is for solopreneurs. It's for people who are one-person enterprises. And I wrote about being able to collaborate. Like that is going to be the lifeline for you if you are a sole entrepreneur. We call solopreneur. And I wrote that book. It's a quick ebook and it's very, very cost effective. You can go to my website, juledaniels.net, and download it. And I actually gift it to a lot of people because it's just a short academic work that I did. It's not something that I'm putting in print. It's just an information-based guide for people who are solopreneurs, one-person enterprises. And now my fourth book. My goodness, did I see this coming? I didn't. I didn't see it coming in this kind of a way, but I have been praying about it for a long time. I didn't know what God wanted me to write about, but now I know, and I'm excited that the book will be released shortly. It'll be out by the end of the month. I thank you for tuning in, for being a part of this process. And make sure you again visit my website, juledaniels.net. Also my company website, which is dcleadershiptraining.com. We are a leadership development specialization company. We customize everything that we do. We don't take anything off the shelf. People can't develop if you're trying to take their unique experience and then just beg and borrow it onto from somebody else's experience. That's not quite how it works, not at all. So I'm excited to take this journey, like I said in the beginning of this time with you. I appreciate you being here with me. I will be hosting webinars that will speak very intimately to each chapter in the book. So stay tuned for that information because they will kick off during the month of June. I thank my daughter, Janae, who has become my agent. She's in the background, making sure all the technology gets done well. You know what, let me say this before I go. It's a gift when you can work with your family. It is such a gift. She's in the background doing all of that. Well, my mom is my backbone. She is so loving. She is my counselor in the middle of the night, in the early morning. So, mommy, I thank you so very much, Miss Diane Yarborough, Lady Di, for being so supportive. And I thank all of you, Facebook family. I thank you for your support. I ask that when I come on here, you can buy the book if you can. If not, please just share the videos, share the information. We have to support each other. If I can help you in your journey and what you're trying to do, please let me know how I can do that. I'm here to be of service. There's one thing that I always ask in this journey when I'm praying. I don't leave my bed without praying. And I always say, God, please allow me to decrease so that the spirit of you within me will increase. And that I touch and agree with each person that you call me to deliver this message, to share my experience. So have a good evening, everyone. I'm past my 45 minutes. Thank you so very much for being here with us during this time. Thank you to my sorority sisters who continue to support, the members of HERMAJ, the Human Resource Management Association of Jamaica, SHRM, ATD, used to be ATD, now it's the Talent Development Organization. It has been absolutely wonderful. I love you, Chris. Thank you so much, Angie, Ilana, Shay, the list goes on, Brian, there's so many people, Rodney. I could be here for another, I don't know how many minutes, how many hours, saying thank you to all of you who have been supportive. I appreciate you, Monifa, Shauna, my best friend in the whole world, Tina, and my best friend from childhood, Trina. Thank you all for participating, for tuning in, for sharing the information, for being supportive. We will announce on Facebook when the book is actually there and live. It will be on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You'll be able to download it through Apple iBooks. So it will be in over 40,000. That's amazing. 40,000 locations, brick and mortar as well as online. And I will be doing a book tour. So stay tuned for that. The information is coming. Until then, have an amazing evening. And I will see you again. I will be doing these sessions regularly. So probably every week, once a week. I'll come on and chat with you for about 45 minutes to an hour. And I appreciate your time with me. Have a good night, everyone. If you have any more questions before I go, please drop it in really quickly. Otherwise, I will see you next time. Good night.